We had a great day yesterday. This was our first time at this show, and it was really fantastic. And I don't want to take away from anything that any speaker said, but there were a few things that really, really struck us, and I just wanted to recap them briefly. Mark Barnes told us yesterday morning that Johns Hopkins is hiring 40 tenured professors to create what amounts to an anti-gun think tank. 40 tenured professors in one place on one topic. And you know that public information is going to come out of that nest. And you know that sooner or later we're going to have to combat that. And because of that, Mark points out one of the most important things we can do is create public persuasion on the other side of the issue. John Fund talked about, very importantly, the fact that satire and ridicule are much more important in combating those other views than anger. And that's something everybody has to be careful about because we've heard a lot of angry groups on this topic. Anger repels. Satire can attract if we use it carefully. Philip Journey reminded us that we need to get young people more aware of the Second Amendment, get new blood into this movement, make more people aware, get them earlier, and feed an influx of pro-rights people. General Youngman talked about the fact, we all know it here, but some people seem to have forgotten it, that self-defense is one of the most basic of human rights. And that we have to fight what other people are saying with truth. But we have to get that truth out there. And Tom Gresham really nailed it for me. He said 4 things that really clubbed me on the head. One was, we're in this forever. There is no final win here because there are always going to be people on the other side. We will always be working on a long-term plan. For tomorrow, for next week, for next month, for 5 years from now, for 20 years from now. Wins breed wins, but losses also breed losses. And public opinion can take away every single win. It can take away the Second Amendment because elections matter. And who gets elected is decided by public opinion. And lawmakers don't just make laws. They often appoint the judges who will rule on those laws and the justices of Supreme Courts in the various states and the U.S. Supreme Court who ultimately decide what the Second Amendment means. So, in addition to the first 2 critical functions of any pro-rights movement, and we know what those are, right? You have to lobby to prevent the passage of bad law, and you have to litigate to oppose bad law that's already passed. But there's a third component, and that's what we're talking about today, and that is you have to educate the public, because a knowledgeable public won't elect people that they know are lying to them. And that's our job. The thing is, the last one of those items is the hardest to do in a society that is well over 200 years beyond its founding, where a lot of the people have grown complacent, there's a lot of apathy, there's a lot of misunderstanding, and we have to become just as adept at giving real information as the anti-rights side is at misleading. So that gets us to our story, which I'll do real quick. You know, Tom Gresham said, everybody can remember that moment when they said, I've had enough. Our I had enough moment stems from the fact that, first of all, we're a team of 4 producers who are based in, I am sorry to say, the People's Republic of Connecticut. Our production office is 15 minutes drive away from Sandy Hook, which I go by about 3 times a week. And the legislative response to Sandy Hook, not just in Connecticut, but of course in New York, in Colorado, in Maryland, in other states, and what our U.S. legislature tried to do, well, that was our I've had enough moment. And if that wasn't enough, then we got to watch one of our U.S. senators, Chris Murphy, tell Rachel Maddow on national television that the Second Amendment is not a God-given right, and that government can limit it as much as it wants, and that anybody who says that the founders intended a right to carry as a defense against tyranny, and I'm using his word here, is insane. That's, I'm sorry to say, our senator. So everything we heard yesterday applies to new media, whether that's audio, moving pictures, text messages, or any other way of communicating. We can't use the anti-gunners tactics. We have to combat what they do with truth, and we can't overstate the case. As Dave Koppel said yesterday, he referred to it as hysterical hyperbole. You do that, you get discounted, you get debunked, the other side wins. We do have to present facts in an engaging manner. We have to grab and hold an audience in a society where attention spans are short. Otherwise, they tune out. Anybody who's lived through a fifth grade history class back in elementary school knows what that's about. And this is where new media can really come into its own. So, for instance, in our case, where we are making a feature-length documentary promoting the Second Amendment, in addition to an on-screen panel of experts, we don't want just talking heads. In addition to graphics and demonstrations of gun technology and stuff, we're using dramatized reenactments with actors portraying the Founding Fathers debating the Bill of Rights, so that you can viscerally get in touch with what it meant to be a group of people who were willing to die to fight a revolutionary war to oppose a government that they had found to be tyrannical. We have no idea what that's like in this society anymore. We're 200 years away from it. Not one of us has imagined the idea of breaking away from our mother country that might very well kill us in the attempt, because it's become that important to preserve liberty. We want to put an audience viscerally in that position. The founders were brilliant men. They designed the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights very, very carefully. They said, not that they're creating rights that the king didn't bother to give his citizens in England. They're acknowledging that the rights enshrined in those documents are the birthrights of all free people everywhere, and that no legitimate government would ever try to take them away. That was a brilliant move, because they were, over 200 years ago, trying to make sure that some of the things we see happening today could not happen as long as we stuck to their writings. And again, that's something that if we put in a presentation in a way that you connect with it at a gut level, can change minds. You're not going to get the far-off anti-rights crowd. You're not. Their minds are made up. But you are going to get the ones in the middle, the ones who haven't decided, the ones who are fence-sitting, the ones who are confused by all of the rhetoric on both sides. And then when we come to present-day level, we want to do the same thing. We want to dramatize some of the situations where law-abiding citizens were able to use firearms to protect themselves and loved ones, and conversely, where people obeyed anti-gun laws, did not bring a firearm into a place where they otherwise would have been able to and suffered tragedy as a result. And again, we want the audience to feel that, because the anti-rights side does that beautifully. And anybody who doubts that needs to read a little pamphlet called Preventing Gun Violence Through Effective Messaging. Who here has not seen that? Could I see a show of hands? Not seen it. Google it. Preventing Gun Violence Through Effective Messaging. It is 80 pages of, oh my God. It is 80 pages of how to misuse tragedy to mislead people. It is terrifying, because it is brilliantly done by the same kind of think tank that they're now hiring 40 more tenured professors to create a bigger version of. So, that's our approach to Infringed, the movie, but more broadly, because everybody's going to have a different approach to this. In approaching this through new media, we'd argue that there are going to be some important commonalities. We need to engage, not just inform. People tune out, they glaze over if all you do is inform all day long. We need to be accurate and truthful, and we need to avoid hyperbole and over-the-top melodramatic approaches, because that pushes people away and it turns them off. We need to grab and hold an audience. And you can do that throughout new media, whether you're talking about a Facebook page, YouTube, any other approach. We need to make the audience feel something. because they need to want to know what comes next. And when we give it to them, we want them to be waiting for it. Now, those are all techniques. They all lead to a goal, and that is that the audience understands the truth, because the truth is on our side. It always has been. And an audience that understands the truth is much more likely to support the pro-rights position than the anti-rights position. Thank you.